Welcome to Straight Talk for Entrepreneurs, where we reveal what it really takes to build a successful business. Whether you are starting with an idea or growing your business, this is the show for you. My guests and I will show you how to build a strong mindset, a powerful body, a profitable business. Hi, I'm Brandon C. White, and this is Build a Business Success Secrets. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Build a Business Straight Talk for Entrepreneurs. We're here with, and I'm going to get his last name wrong, even though I've known him for like 5 years, Ben Congleton. Is that right, Ben?
I'll take it.
All right. He is the co-founder and current CEO of OLark. And if you don't know OLark, you need to know OLark. OLark was the first company to put that little icon in the right-hand side of a website so that you can talk to your customers. And we're going to talk about that, but what we're really going to talk about, because Ben has a super interesting story. We've known each other, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. We met at a where did we meet, Ben?
We met at a conference in Vegas.
In Vegas.
Put on by Paul, right?
Yeah.
Conference.
Startup Accelerator.
Yeah. It was such a cool, eclectic group of people. Everyone there was super interesting, and it was a small group, small conference. It was great.
Yeah, it was all, and for listeners, Ben and I started talking, and Ben lives over in East Palo Alto. I live in Half Moon Bay. Ben thinks I live on the other end of the earth as well as everyone else, but we're really not that far from one another. The crazy part is we just caught up in person that we've been meaning to do for 4 years, but we see each other at the conference. But Ben, thank you so much. I know we're doing it on Friday. This is just the way it works out. Thank you so much. Tell us your story, and can you take us back to all the way back to where OLark started from?
Yeah, and we were chatting about this beforehand. So we're going to go way back, set the scene. It's like pre-2001, right? We're going way back there. So pre-2001, I had started a web hosting company in high school, so 1998. And at this time, there was actually a couple live chat providers, but they were all very enterprise focused. But there was one live chat provider called HumanClick. This was an Israeli company.
Old school.
That's old school. And so we were using HumanClick. It was super valuable for our business. As a small business, as high schoolers, we didn't have a phone number. We used chat to connect with our customers. And so we grew that business. By senior year, we were doing about $170,000 a year in revenue, which was pretty awesome. It was super fun. And but during that time, HumanClick ended up getting bought by LivePerson and becoming the tech stack for LivePerson. And so we had switched to other products that were more affordable, because when LivePerson bought HumanClick, they ramped up the pricing a ton and then focused on enterprise, which made a ton of sense. But for a small business, it kind of screwed us over. So imagine you have that idea in the back of your mind, right? You fast forward, you've graduated from college, you finished high school, you graduated from college. During this time, you still kept running that web hosting company kind of on the side, and you had some buddies who, were co-founded that web hosting company with you, and you were kind of thinking about what's next. And so I'd gone off and worked on a PhD at the University of Michigan. My two co-founders of that web hosting company, one of them had gone to LA to start a band. The other was sort of working in Southwestern Virginia, Norfolk, just doing full-time sort of consulting from deals that I would go find, and sort of keeping the lights on the web hosting company. And
you're making some extra money here, right?
Honestly, it was not making a lot of money. It was not lucrative. This was completely not lucrative. It's we peaked senior year of high school in revenue. And then we all went to undergrad, and we had fun in college and used it to help pay for our degrees and stuff like that. But we weren't banking money. I think we decided to have fun in college and have passive income is a freaking lie, but we had kind of declining income.
Well, I like that, because I just did something. I was telling someone the other night, I was like, I'm so sick and tired of all this online BS about passive income. I mean, passive income just means to me that you're not a service business. It means that it works when you're not there, but it doesn't mean you don't work.
Yeah, I mean, there may be some magic out there somewhere, but like this is not us. So so anyway, so we had two guys basically whose livelihood was based on the consulting jobs I could find. We had some income still coming in from the web hosting company. I was working on a PhD, and we're like we started getting jobs from startups, and so people were hiring us to go build stuff for them. And in my mind, I was like, man, these are like not great ideas. They're still paying us a bunch of money. Like, why don't we go do this ourselves? And they would like try to like have us like pay us in options or equity or something like that. We're just like, no, just give us cash. You guys can make all the money, but like we just need to pay our bills. And so what we would do is we would build them out. Like, let's say we were stupid, charging way too little money. Like, let's say we charged $75 an hour.
What?
We would pay ourselves $25 an hour. This is how dumb we were. So we'd pay ourselves like $25 an hour. And then for 2/3 of our time, we'd spend working on cool projects and like new ideas and stuff like that. So bill a client, spend the rest of the time working on new ideas. And so the first idea that we built with this team, like me, Kevin, and Roland, was something called Mopus, which kind of tells you how much we sucked at marketing, but it was a modular synthesis for GarageBand. It was fairly popular with like German techno artists, but it was because Roland and Kevin were both into electronic music, and so this sort of fit with their interests. And I was like, hey guys, like you know the market better than I do. Like if this thing can work, that's great. Turned out it didn't work very well, but it made thousands of dollars, but not like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this was pre-iPhone. How we released it as an iPhone app, like who knows what the world would have been like. But it was pretty cool. And after that kind of flop, we went back to the drawing board and looked at a couple other products because Roland was actually in a signed band out in LA. He had this idea, oh, it's so hard to keep track of all our gigs. We have to update our MySpace. We have to update whatever other websites existed back in like 2007, 2006 to post your band gigs on. Maybe Facebook, probably update Facebook. GeoCities. Had to update your tripod page. You had to log into your BBS and like update. Anyway, like so it was a pain. So I was like, oh, let's build this tool for bands so that you can post your gigs and people know and can follow you and stuff like that. And then we're like, oh, sudden insight, bands have no money. They're not going to be able to pay us.
Sudden insight. I like
so we kind of spec'd it out and then decided not to build it. And then at this point, we were sort of into this idea of thinking about products, incubating products, trying out new ideas. And we were like, oh, well, what about live chat? Like what's happened with live chat in the last like 10 years? So this is like 2000, we'll call it 2007, something like that, right? So like, I don't know, 8 years ago, we'd first used live chat. Now we looked around and it was the same freaking guys. In 8 years, like nothing had changed in the market. Like everyone was just copying live person and trying to build enterprise solutions. And we're like, this is ridiculous, right? Like there's all these small businesses selling online. There's this growing like movement from offline to online commerce. And there's no good communication technique for SMBs to talk to their customers on their website. Like people are spending all this money in AdWords and there's no way to talk to them. And we know that this is valuable because we used it back when we were getting started. And now we were a lot more sophisticated. We knew how to program, we knew how to scale stuff. And so we're like, oh, okay, well, what if we just built the thing that we needed 10 years ago or 8 years ago? And so we set out to build chat that just basically worked for us. It was super freaking easy to add to the website. We kept thinking like, what if you could drop one line of code on and it would just work? And the second part was, what if you didn't have to change any of your habits? We're like, okay, like back in the day, we all used Pigeon or ADM. We were in there as IM clients all the time. What if like chatting with customers on your website was that easy? And so we actually built the original version and we hacked it in so you could chat from AIM into people on your website. You could chat from I think we built MSN and you could do it via like iChat and Jabber. And so we built the thing basically that we would have loved 8 years ago. And it was very simple. It's pretty ugly. And the neat thing is, at that time, we had to invent like all the tech, because like at that time it was pretty innovative. Like there was no like XHTTP request. There was no like,
That's old school. I remember
you had
that.
to make it like IE6 compatible. Like it was a fairly complicated technical challenge just to make the basic plumbing of this thing work. And then on the back end, dealing with all these third party like it's meshing protocols, like we were able to like hack stuff together. We were like writing C code. I mean, it was a cool technical challenge to kind of get it running. And then we sort of took that, and again, like I was doing my PhD, primary income was coming from consulting. Roland was still kind of doing the band thing. Kevin was spending most of his time doing consulting work. So this was kind of like we were like fitting it in 2/3 time, and I would basically dedicate every Sunday to this thing. Like every Sunday I would start working on it. It originally was called Habla, which means to talk in Spanish. We bought hab.la because I really like short domain names.
Yeah.
And so that domain name was bought, I think, in 2007. So in 2007, we had a name. We hired a friend of mine from high school to do like all the initial design work. And so he built like a brand and a nice website for us. And then we kind of started going around to forums and looking for people that were looking for widgets to put on their website to chat with their visitors. And that meant we were talking, there was a lot of librarians looking for stuff like this. There was occasionally, there was at this time, there was a company called Meebo that had aggregate. It was kind of like putting Pigeon or ADM and putting it in the browser. Like that was their key value proposition, is they just like took that and put it into a browser. And they had this thing called Meebo Me, which is like this little chat widget. And we were like, well, their chat widget's horrible. What if we can just like find all the people complaining about all the limitations of their chat widget and just send them links to our stuff? And
On
so
the
that,
BBS boards? Is this BBS?
they had a forum. So, well,
Oh,
yeah. I mean, this isn't like dial up. Yes, but yeah, they had a
no, right.
forum.
But you're in their chat. You're just reading the reviews and then just DMing or.
Yeah, basically. Well, we'd make a lot of public posts, but we would just like scour the internet like for these forums, because this is like what, probably pre-Twitter and stuff like that too. And
Right.
so we would scour the internet for people who are having this complaint, and we would be helpful and non-spammy and be like, hey, we're building this free thing to solve the problem that you're having. Check it out. Like, we built this for ourselves. What do you think of it? And so that's how we got our initial customers. They're mostly libraries and kind of a weird swash of people that have been using MeeboMe. And so the interesting thing, because of that, and this is interesting because I don't think I've actually told the story before. So you're getting like some really like some fresh,
I'm
really
grateful
fresh,
for that, Ben.
fresh stuff. And so, all right, so this is 2000. So 2007, we had the product. It launched. It was free. In 2008, so we had been at it for about, I don't know, not quite a year. Summer 2008, we kind of worked more of the bugs out, and it like kind of worked, and people were using it, and we had more users using it. And at this point, I think Meebo had kind of caught on to us. And we got a phone call from Meebo, or an email. If I was an email, right? An email from Meebo said like, "Hey guys, we want to buy you," and we're like, "Come on out to California and meet the team." And we're like, "Okay, well that sounds kind of cool." So we all flew out there. I think at that time Roland was living in Virginia, Kevin was living in another part of Virginia, and I was at Michigan working my PhD. So we all flew out there. Like, we should have realized we weren't going to make any money when we got picked up by the super shuttle at the airport, but we took the super shuttle to the crappy hotel that they put us up in. I went down to Castro Street in Mountain View, where their office was basically above one of the bars there. So like one of the perks of their office was that there was a back stairwell that like went into a bar, and we thought that was kind of cool. But went upstairs, and it just kind of felt like a job interview. We're like, this is kind of weird. Like, we're not really talking about the business. This seems like kind of like a personal interview situation. And then the end of that, they're like, hey, well, we want to do like an asset acquisition. We'll give you like tens of thousands of dollars, and we want to hire Kevin. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to sell the business for tens of thousands of dollars, but if you want to try to hire Kevin, go for it. And like, and so this was probably like, I don't know, August of 2008. And so, maybe July. And then, so basically Kevin initially said no to them, right? He's a very loyal friend, and like, he wanted to do this. And I think I had told Seth, like, basically, no, but you can try to hire Kevin, you know, whatever. He's my friend, but if he wants to leave, like, you know, I give you my blessing to go try to hire him, because like, I'm working my PhD. Like, I don't know where this thing's going. It's still a side project.
It's a project.
Yeah. And so, Kevin ended up getting hired. They like flew out to Virginia. They like baked them cookies. They worked hard on him. Kevin was a genius, and is still a genius. And so he ended up getting hired and going and working at Nebo. And that left me and Roland. And so I am like kind of cross business technical. Roland's a great designer, really good, like really good thinking creatively. You know, with like growing product manager skills and stuff like that. And so it was just us. And I was like, man, I don't want to be CTO. Like, I don't want to like run tech. I'm more interested in kind of the whole picture. And so we started this sort of search for, okay, well, I think what ended up happening was that me and Roland sat down. We're like, man, how do we make this thing real? Like, either we need to kind of kill this off and move on with our lives and just focus on, like, I got to focus on my PhD. Roland had talked about going to architecture design school, or we got to like try to make this thing real. So it's like, do we kill it or do we make it real? And I think Roland kind of pushed and said like, hey, maybe we should apply to YCombinator. This wasn't me. Roland was like, maybe we should apply to YCombinator. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And so, like, Roland pushed us, and like, we filled out the app and applied to YCombinator.
It's you, Roland, and who at this point?
It was me and Roland, and it's interesting. I think on the YC application, let's try it. I think actually there's one other person on the YC application. It was my friend George. It was like a college buddy that I had added. Love this guy, really good friend. I think we convinced him to be part of the application, and he was kind of excited about it.
And you are studying, what is your PhD you're studying?
I was studying, I was in the School of Information. So I had a master's in computer science. I had an undergrad in business and computer science, and information is kind of an interdisciplinary degree. So it's super freaking fun. Like, I was like taking anthropology courses. I was taking econ. I was taking design courses. It was basically like understand people using all different methods, like anything from quantitative to qualitative, to like the way economists approach rational thinking, to the way anthropologists approach like just studying the way people make decisions and live their lives.
That sounds awesome.
Super fascinating. I even took a class in the business school on like conversation analysis. It was like the most fun ever. It was super fun. And
so you, Roland, and George, this guy.
Yeah. George is super smart. I could have a whole interview on George, but like, George is amazing. But yeah, so we applied.
You applied to YCombinator.
Yeah, but in parallel to that process, I was kind of like, all right, we need to find another tech co-founder. Like we need a technical co-founder for this. And I can speak tech, I can talk to engineers. Like, I love doing this stuff, but it's not my passion. It's not like the thing that, like, you know, I'm not like driven to like simplify and create good software engineering and like all the processes around that. Like, those are weaknesses for me. And I want to find someone that loves doing that stuff. Even though I can do it, I want someone who loves it. And so I started going to a lot of meetups in Ann Arbor. I was living in Ann Arbor, Michigan at the time. Went to a lot of meetups trying to just meet people. At one point I convinced this guy, forgot his name, but he had a competing product to Abla, and it was called Library Help. It was all written in Erlang. He was like some, I want to say like kind of a technical guy at some astronomy lab in like North Carolina or something like that. Right. And I was like, you know, clearly you love the technology side. I like the business side more. Do you want to work together? And so like we kind of did a little experiment, and like he helped me out, like writing some code in Erlang. Like, I was like, oh, why don't you try to re-implement the service we have in Erlang and see how that feels, and let's try to work together and see see if if that relationship works at all. And like we went back and forth for a bit, and he's like, you know what, like I can't do a startup right now. I got too much going on in my life. It's not a good fit. But like, I built a connection. I talked to this guy, convinced him to give it a shot, and like, in the end, it didn't really work out for him. And not sure where he is today. Probably super happy, but it just wasn't like the right road for him. And then like I had met this guy Brandon through these meetups, and I was like, Brandon's pretty sharp, and I don't know. It's like there's so many details of this story, but like we'll just like magically I met Brandon through a meetup. There is a friend that actually introduced me to Brandon because he had just been let go from his job, and then I was like, hey, like I'm working on this thing. Do you want to help me out? See anything going on? Do you want to be my co-founder? And like, Brandon came over. So at this point it was me, Roland. I think George was still involved at this point, and Brandon. And I would say George probably wasn't doing much. I was doing a lot. Roland was doing a lot. Brandon was doing a bit. And like we were together. We'd kind of get together on Sundays and kind of jam on this because Brandon and I were local. We'd go like sit on his couch and like hack on stuff for a bit on Sundays, maybe a little bit during the week and stuff. Fast forward, it's now like, what time is it? Oh, I guess. Okay. So in December 2008, YCombinator said that we could interview with them. We're accepted an interview. But because the market is so bad, and we're not sure if you're gonna get funded, if you want to, you can defer. And we were like, all right, I'm in the middle of a PhD program. It's a lot of stuff in flux. I don't even know if we have the right founding team. Let's freaking defer. And then in the meantime, let's apply to Techstars. Let's apply to other accelerators. Let's just like clean up our lives and go focus on this thing. So like we got the interview. We said, all right, we'll put it off. We'll interview for the next batch. And so from December to, I would say, June of that year, so December 2008 to June of or whatever, I don't know. I don't remember when the interview was. We'll call it like May or something like that, or March. I don't remember. April, May. It was probably in April. So in that interim time, we applied to Techstars. We met people at Techstars. We ended up getting into Techstars for both Boulder and Boston. We were like giving talks, like entrepreneurial events on like the stuff we were doing, basically just living like we're going to do it for real. Like we're just like F Combinator, F accelerators. We're going to get in if we can. Like if we get in, we get in. If we don't, like they're missing out. Like we're
right.
making
You're rolling. You're building a company at this point.
And I'd done this with my web hosting company. The web hosting company initial outside investment was $100 from my uncle, who helped us buy the domain name. We had friends that hooked us up with our initial like server hosting. We did a bunch of consulting work to like buy our first servers. Like we had done this before. Like just. Like I was more familiar bootstrapping than any other format of building business. So like that's all I know and all I knew. So so we were like, we're going to do this for real. It's South. I think at some point during this process, prior to March, I had met this guy, Matt, and this other guy, Andrew, at a, kind of like a startup drinks event in Ann Arbor, like just a networking event. Like there was a lot of like kind of entrepreneurs at events and stuff like that in Ann Arbor. And so like, so me being there and having an actual product just made like all the best people want to talk to me. Like the people who want to do startups but didn't have an idea or stuff like that would come talk to me. And so I sort of had my pick of people to work with me back then, because I was like, oh, the guy who's actually doing it. And, he's a PhD student, like it was kind of cool. And what ended up happening was Brandon, I think, was about to get married. And so he couldn't like leave Michigan, and he had just bought a house or something. Like he had a lot of like other constraints going in his life. And George was unwilling to leave Austin, Texas. Like he had also bought a condo. He'd worked at IBM and like a couple companies down there, and he was underwater on his mortgage. And he loved Austin. And so like we had these, like the two guys, right, were just in a situation where like financially it didn't make a ton of sense for them, and like just at their stage in life it didn't make a ton of sense for them. And so what ended up happening is I think I met Matt at this event, and I was like, Matt, you can be a co-founder, like if you go talk to George, and like he's cool with it, and he decides to leave, and you replace him, basically. And so he went down to South by Southwest, he was already going to, and he met George in Austin, talked it over with George, and George decided like, hey, like Matt's a much better person to do this than I am. So like,
You had some really good people, just like good humans involved.
I only really work with good humans. Like I can't. I mean, you know, I've worked with some people who aren't good humans, but like my direct network of like really close friends that I was doing this stuff with, like they're all just fantastic human beings.
Right.
And like I think that's kind of what it takes. Like, you know, the people that you're gonna like that you would even consider to be at like co-founder level, like these are people that like you know they have your back. You know that they're thinking of the team. They're not thinking of themselves, and like they're just like good people. So like, you know, like George, my friend from Austin, like just amazing good friend of mine. And like, you know, like we're still very close friends. And you know, like yeah, it kind of sucked that he couldn't leave Austin and go do this thing with me, but like, you know, anyone that you would elevate to that level of like, hey, we're gonna like work together for like 10 years, like you better be like, you
Right.
better like really have a bond there, because you're gonna go through tons of shit. and
Yeah.
sometimes you can get lucky, right? You can meet someone at a bar. Like I met Matt at a bar,
Mm.
and like we were just chatting, and he just, you know, I think because he had been friends with Brandon, like that existing network like helped make me be more reputable in that situation. And Matt turned out to be an amazing human being. And so uh
And was there
yeah.
any that quick question, because a lot of listeners, was there any issue with equity at this point? I mean, was it all up in the air? Like George says, Matt's a better person. Did you give George like a piece of the pie, or George, or, you know, it was all business like, hey, you can't do it. We're really sorry. We absolutely love you, George. But
Well, at that time, no one was full time, and we
oh,
were all just trying to like we were all doing this part time on the side, and we weren't even sure it was going to be real. The only
okay.
like real equity agreements that had been put in place at that time was we had not like back in those days, man. Like we were just like inventing this shit. Like there's like so much resources now. I think we just kind of invented like kind of like vesting over time. We're just like,
Right.
how should we divide this? Okay, well we'll like set a cap table. We'll just like pay ourselves in shares and like all informally. Like we hadn't incorporated or anything like that. Like
Got you.
we were just kind of like we had a gentleman's agreement because we're all like friends, and
Right.
like no one was. I think everyone was just like reasonable human beings. And so uh, for Kevin, because he had like written so much of the code and really been in it, I think the situation is a little bit different. And then the guy David, who'd actually done all the like website design stuff, I think we ended up just paying him for that because like he ended up not being in a place to be a co-founder either. Like
Got you.
so like I think all, and the neat thing is all this was happening part-time on the side, which I think also made it a little bit easier too, because no one had like made giant sacrifices to go do
Right.
this. Like they were all kind of doing it on the side to help out friends because they're kind of excited about doing the startup thing. And then the idea of like leaping and not getting paid any money, like
Yeah.
I think like
Changes things.
yeah, it changes things. So uh and I would say that in all the cases of all the people we met, for the most part, these are people that we had like existing relationships with, or like for friends of people that we had existing relationships with. And so it kind of had that network. The only exception of that rule would be like Andrew, who kind of joined us as a third co-founder or a fourth co-founder when we went into YC, because back then they would give you an extra 5K per founder.
Right.
And you know, Andrew's a smart guy, but I think like if like it was clear like he was a junior, like he, you know, or might have been like he still needed to do a senior year of college. And so,
Oh, okay. So,
so
but the four of you decided to go do Y Combinator at this point.
not yet,
Oh,
but more or less, yeah. So we had to get into YC first, but I think like
sure.
shortly after, like George, Matt subbing for George, Andrew like just kind of spent a lot of time working on me to let him join, and I like made him do a bunch of work, like go do a bunch of business case stuff and things like that. And he kind of like showed me that he worked hard and was willing to like put in the time, and you know I like smart, young, ambitious people. Like I love
Yeah.
it working with ambitious people, and Andrew is definitely super hardworking. And so like I admired that in him. And so I was like, yeah, sure, man, we'll make you a founder and you can come out and do YC with us. Like, so I think like I kind of sometimes am a little trite about like, oh yeah, we added Andrew to be a co-founder because we for extra 5K. But like in actuality, like Andrew had proved himself during those couple months before YC that he was just like in it. He was like working hard. He had like, I mean, he probably had the most sales experience of anyone on the team. Like he brought a lot to the table, but he was pretty young and inexperienced. And I mean, there's a lot to be said of ambition, young and inexperienced. Like it provides a lot of value and a lot of energy. And so I guess like basically,
So you guys have, it's just like I mean, I don't know, it's a sausage factory, right? You guys are just figuring it out, but you eventually get your rears to California.
Yeah. So I think we finally at some point after March of 2009, we ended up with the team being like me, Matt, Roland, and Andrew. And
Equal co-founders.
no, we hadn't done equity. We hadn't discussed equity yet.
Oh, okay.
We really finalized equity at that point.
Got
like,
it.
We weren't like in YC. We hadn't incorporated.
So still a project, but you had customers.
No one was paying us at this point.
Oh, okay. All free.
It was just all free users. And so it was still just kind of very much like a dream and a bunch of excitement. And so
I know that feeling.
And so I think probably like letting Andrew join kind of happened like last minute. I can't remember. I don't remember if he was at the YC interview or not. I think we might have added him between getting in and joining YC, but he might remember that better than I do. But like that was like over 10 years ago. So I don't remember that specific detail. But when we started YC, Andrew was there. He was a co-founder. He had a lesser equity. Me, Matt, and Roland didn't do complete split. Like I took a little bit more than those guys because I was kind of like the driving force for this thing. But for the most part, it was pretty even.
Got you.
And that got us to California. I mean, it only took me half an hour to get us to California.
Well, you got us to get. We're in California now, but I think that story's important.
The rest is history.
Yeah. I think the important part is that people think that you just like, hey, Ben, come over for dinner. And we whip out this idea and we go crank some code out. And oh my God, OLark's got XYZ users and we're making money and we're drinking beer. Like, that's not the way it happens.
Nope. There's nothing like that. I mean, I guess I'll get us to the end of YC and I'll accelerate a little bit. I just kind of wanted to focus on that part of the story, just because part of the story I haven't really told very much before.
Well, it's really important. I think also the lesson there is you've got to find, I mean, and people always ask, right? I mean, you know this, a non-technical co-founder is like, I need to find technical co-founder. And I always say, well, that's the wrong, first of all, you're asking the wrong question. The right question is, I need to find the right co-founder, because technical, non-technical, I don't care. You're married. Like you said, you go through, it's not, the high is when you win and you're feeling good, but that's not the test. The test is when.
Yeah. I mean, you will deal with tons and tons of shit and it takes a long time. So like, I think there is this like outside notion that like, there's a couple of stories, right? These companies that grow like super fast and like get successful very, very quickly. And I think people like to kind of hang on to those stories, like sort of the like Instagrams or the like Facebooks, these like rapid success stories. But those are the exceptions. And I think that it's important to give people a context. There's many success stories that take a very long time and take a lot of pivots and take like.
And even those guys though, Ben, I tell people like Facebook didn't happen. Yes, they had rapid growth, but it still wasn't overnight. Like there were several years when they were doing colleges, and I use Under Armour, right? Everyone's like, oh, Kevin and those guys. No, Kevin was in Kip's grandmother's basement making shirts out of pantyhose material for like 4 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no one wants to talk. And I think even Airbnb, those guys, I think were a month away from going broke, like, building cereal boxes.
And I
So
think they had tried to do something else first, and they had kind of like,
yeah.
there's like a couple of different things they had tried during that process of actually figuring out what their company was even going to be. But I
But your
think that the
point's well
point that
made.
I'm
Like,
trying to make is even once you
right.
know what your company is going to be, it takes time too. And there are a couple guys that have gotten very, I would say, lucky in terms of market timing,
Yeah.
network, and they've done really well. But I feel like you don't really want to like base your philosophy or your approach on like getting lucky. You need to kind of build a process that's going to work, that like generates opportunity over time, as opposed to just counting on opportunity just existing for like one moment and just go grab it really fast.
Yeah. It's like get rich quick scheme. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I think we have a little bit of lag,
Yeah, we
but I
got a
think
lag,
Zoom
but we're back.
catches us up.
We're back.
Yeah. So where do you want to go in the story, Brandon? I'm here.
I
Here
want
with
you.
you.
I want you to go to. Can you walk us through for the listeners? I mean, not everybody knows. We're tech nerds, Ben. Not everybody knows Y Combinator, but Y Combinator is really considered probably the de facto accelerator in the world. I mean, there's Techstars and there's other really, really good accelerators. Y Combinator is probably one of the first that really had the hits and put them on the map and has an engine that does it. I think what I'd love you to talk about is you go through Y Combinator and you get a little bit of money, but the expectation when you go through Y Combinator is this demo day, and now you're going to go raise money. And there's this thing here in the Valley that we live in, that the badge of honor, that's what I call it, or like
Mhm.
the gold star for Ben is having raised money. And I always tell entrepreneurs that ask me for advice, like, hey, the badge of honor is not raising money. The badge of honor is getting customers to build a business and actually never having to raise money. Now, you have to at times it makes sense to raise money to accelerate your business, but that's not what we're shooting for. Like, can we go to these bunch of places on Sand Hill Road or somewhere and convince them that our idea is good, and then all is good in the world, Ben? All is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us about like your experience, because
Yeah.
how that worked and what your choice was, because you didn't take that route.
Right. Yeah. So okay. So we finished Y Combinator. It's August 2009. We do a demo day. We're not the hottest thing coming out of demo day. Like there's a couple of guys talking to us. We don't know anything about raising money. We don't have like a lot of advice to lean on or networks and stuff like that. So we're like, yeah, we're gonna raise money. And we start that process, and we get like a couple of families, some friends give us a little bit of cash.
Little though. You
Yeah,
and I were talking about this here.
total raise I think was 60K.
Yeah,
So
I mean, that's just, sounds like a lot of money to maybe an entrepreneur who hadn't raised any money, but like in the realm of things, that's
well, you
really
can't pay one person's salary with 60K. So so
right.
so like that's that. But like but like in that process, right? We went and we talked to some VCs. We had a couple of guys who looked like they were kind of interested in giving us money. Like there was a guy who built a live chat company before, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll do this I'll put in money if I can be chairman of the board." And then there's another guy who was like, or he wanted to kind of create the board composition like right then. And then there was another guy, set of guys that were sort of, I would guess, buddies with this guy who were willing to put in like maybe 400K. So we probably could have raised a bunch more money at that stage. But the thing is, at least our perception, and this could have just been a negotiating point to be removed, but it seemed like this money was coming with a lot of strings. And and for me, like part of the reason I'd wanted to build a company, and I wrote this like blog post before I'd like even done much, is like kind of like freedom. Like I built OLark so that I could have a place where I wanted to be the CEO or the next hire, or I could hang out with a bunch of my friends doing something great. And that was like Ben of 2009 kind of writing this blog post about why this thing was getting started. And like at that time, just like, this just doesn't feel right. It's not like, oh, I know how to do the route where you bootstrap and you grow it. And we got like, the team had changed a little bit. We had brought on another co-founder and replacing Andrew. So it was me, Matt, Roland, and Zach. Zach was a technical genius. So we had like two technical geniuses, Matt and Zach. Zach was a technical genius at the back end. Matt was a technical genius at the front end. Roland was a amazing designer. I'm like an okay business guy, a shitty manager, and like a reasonable back-end engineer. But like, yeah, I kind of like do a lot of things poorly. But like, and so yeah, we basically had all the ingredients we needed to be successful, I think, at that time. So we had the right people, we had enough money to eat, and we just needed time. And so we, said, okay, we're going to raise as much as we can the next week. I think we next, like whatever, at some point we're like, raise as much as we can the next week, and then we're done. This is just a waste of time. Because we don't need the money. And so, and like at this point we'd launched paid, we'd a slowly increasing line that showed our revenue. We're like, you know what, we just follow this line for a while, it'll be fine. Every day we get a graph that would be like, what is our MRR? And it would show like the building over time.
That's a monthly recurring revenue for people out there who are
revenue,
not
yeah.
tech, but that is the key, one of the key metrics that you want to watch.
For a software as a service business, it's a good metric. There's probably some other metrics we should have been paying more attention to, is like usage or like chats or something. Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, I think actually in those days, all those metrics were really great, but we were really just looking at, but the thing is we weren't looking at them. They just happened to be great. It was just like, we lucked out and they were great. So there's many things that like we kind of just managed to get by doing, but that MRR number for us was like.
But wasn't that really a signal at that point, Ben, for you that, I hate to use this word, it's so freaking overused, but you got product market fit, and said a better way, you were just solving people's problem, a true problem that they had that was a true pain point, and they were willing to pay you. I mean, at simplifying, that's it.
Yeah. No, it's true. And the thing about it is we had figured out a way that it marketed itself well, because every chat box had a link back to us on it. And so in addition, so we had that going on for us, and we had like really high word of mouth, and that was it. We did not do any paid ads. Didn't really know anything about marketing. Like in OLark's history, we've never really done paid marketing. Like just not something we've ever really understood how to do.
But you did some good, I mean, maybe you meant to, you and I talked about this a little bit in the past, but you also, call it luck, call it whatever, but you got some luck with some organic SEO. I mean, you had that viral component.
Yeah, we did have SEO that helped us out a bit, but in the early days, that wasn't a factor at all.
It was the virality.
Well, back then we didn't have, domain authority is pretty low because we were new, and we didn't have tons of links back to us at that point because we were just still getting started. But
when did you change your name, and why did you do that?
Oh yeah, so that happened during YCombinator. People think of Paul Graham as like this like genius who has the answers for everything, and all I can say is through our meetings with him, the main thing he was like telling us is like, don't be like Dropbox. Like Dropbox was getdropbox.com, and it was just such a huge thing for them to buy Dropbox.com. Like it was just a huge ordeal. It cost them tons of money. And he's like, just like own the .com, whatever you guys are gonna be before you get big. So we were like, we looked at obla.com, and I think they wanted like 50K for it or something. We didn't have 50K. So we're like, okay, that's not going to work. Plus, we learned at some point that obla means something kind of like asshole in Arabic or something similar.
Oh, God.
And then we also learned that no one in the freaking US knows how to spell obla. And like, most people don't know what it means. And we were getting people like, that's the stupidest name ever. And we're like, okay, like, fine.
We got it.
We got enough signals here. There's no need to hold on to this. Even though we were like, into it. We loved it. We had like, internally, we're calling ourselves the Obladors. Like, I don't know. It was a fun brand. But so we had to come with a new brand, and we just kept putting this off. And eventually we're just like, okay, guys, this week we're doing it. We're going to pick our new brand. And so there's 4 of us. We sat down, generated a list of open domain names that we thought could be our brand. There was names like Nowify that I ended up, Nowify, some Pingby. Pingby was a favorite. User C, all these, like, I don't know, all these brands, these names. And then we would kind of like vote on them. And I think we're kind of like, okay, fine, we can be like Pingby, I guess. And then we'd call up like Matt's dad, and Matt would have to describe to his dad like the name of the company. And if he couldn't like figure out what Matt was saying, then like it was a no-go. So like Matt called up his dad about Pingby, and his dad had no idea what he was saying, or no any idea how to spell it. And we're just like, okay, F this shit. Like, I'm done with this process. I'm just gonna pick a name. We're gonna be that name for the week, and then if we don't like it, we'll pick another name a week later. So Roland had come up with the name OLark. I don't know where it came from. At the time, he kind of disliked it when I picked it. I was like, that's too bad, Roland. You submitted it as a name. It's short and it's easy to spell, and it's basically unique internationally. So with that name, we can own the brand. We can create anything we want. There's no connotation in people's heads with this word. So we were OLark for a week. At the end of the week, everyone still liked being OLark, and then we never looked back.
Awesome. Well, that's a good. It's a good story. It's good for people to understand. Like, do you think in today's day and age, you actually need the .com? I mean, we're on Zoom. Zoom is zoom.us. Like, do you think that today it's as important?
I'm an old school guy. Still like the .coms. I don't know. Like,
so the answer is yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm old school. So there's probably data that shows it's not important, but I still think that for the average person, you say something to them and just automatically add .com to it. Like, not tech people, but just kind of like, you said, I was like zoom.io. You tell like your dad might add zoom.io.com. All right, cool.
Right. Yeah, it's fair. It's true. So
that's what people were doing with Obla, hab.la.com. Everyone thought you just had, like, I would say like average users just thought you had that .com too. And for us, it was for word of mouth. We're just like, we want people to be able to tell someone else what the company is, what the brand is, unambiguously, like when they say it.
Fair enough. So you get out, you decide, tongue in cheek here, I'm going to raise money for a week. Whatever we get, we're not going to do. And or whatever money we get, great. But then we're not doing that raise money thing anymore. We're going to go build the product. And at that point, you get a good line of word of mouth, effectively, whether you designed it into the product and knew it was going to work or not. But you have that link in the chat of every single one. And actually, before you and I met, I knew you because of that. And you and I, we're not that old, but compared to some 20-year-old, we're probably seem old, but we come from, three or four waves of the internet when we can remember back to the old BBS boards. But I remembered OLark because of that, because it was viral. So at that point, you guys are growing, and did you just continue the trajectory?
That's a really good question. I haven't thought about the early day growth that much recently. There probably was kind of like various moments that kind of looked like a hockey stick, like where it'd be like, and then like kind of plateau off and kind of, there was never kind of like, hockey stick, everything just goes. And I'm not sure I really have like a great explanation for what was happening like in our growth. I mean, I think that in the early days, we would have like PR hits every once in a while, and those PR hits seem to be like pretty helpful. As time went on, like we would try different things. Like, for example, we did I think we might have done like a partnership with Shopify or something like that, like pretty early on. And that like way back when Shopify was tiny, right? And that was pretty huge for us too. And so there's a couple of these sort of little inflection points. We're working with some other company that was not big yet, but like pretty good at getting PR. Like that would be pretty helpful for us in those early days. And
I always say it's like a pivotal moment.
It added legitimacy to the brand, and it like when Shopify was going off and trying to raise money, like we ended up being some of their case studies, and so they would go and tell VCs like, hey, like look at our partner network and how like, you know, people are building like real businesses on top of our partner network. And you know, I knew all like Toby and all the people over at Shopify back when Shopify was tiny. So and I think that it's just like interesting kind of being in that environment and like being in an ecosystem where people are just helping each other out. And so but I don't know, I don't really think there's like pivotal like moments where like it's like, oh, this thing happened and made a major impact. I just think it was like a series of like hustling, like trying to meet other partners in your ecosystem, like understanding all the people there, like actually knowing them as human beings. And occasionally these people we'd help each other out. Like we'd promote them, they promote us. I think that really caring about our customers. So in the early days, we all did rotations on support just to make sure that we would stay like very close to the user. And especially when you're just getting off the ground, when you're 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people, like that, that time is just critical to making sure that you're not out there just like building random shit. Like you're actually solving problems for your customer. Because I feel like it's very easy to take a step back and be like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if, when people are all like, hey, like just make free message delivery work better or something, you know, like it's so easy, I think, to like put a support person in front of your customers and then get like a summary and then like just like end up building stuff that's like not really that important for your customers at that stage.
So it's really important to listen to the customer. I think that rotation is, I mean, or even if you just are listening in all the calls and not even doing it, that you learn a ton. So Ben, the other thing that's really interesting is, and I love you did this because I having raised some money, I got beat up from it, some investors in the past. You have a completely remote team, right?
Yeah, completely remote. We stopped paying office leases entirely. I don't know, maybe like, it wasn't even that long ago. I think we still leased in Ann Arbor, Michigan, like last year in March or something. But no one actually had been going to the office for years. It was just kind of like, just like empty building, empty floor of a building.
And how many people do you have? You have over 30, right?
Yeah, I think we got like, the number is always like a little bit murky in my mind, but it's probably like around 33 somewhere, give or take 2. I think around 33 is what we have right now.
And you guys use, just for those out there who, you know, are thinking about remote teams, Zoom, do stand-ups with your team, and then you do, I always see some pictures, and I hear you talk about it. You do, which maybe you would invite some outsiders occasionally, probably be cool. But what do you do? To get together once or twice a year?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we get together entirely as a company for a week once a year. And every year prior to this year, we'd fly people's spouses or SOs out if they wanted to come, and we fly their kids out if they wanted to come. This year, we tried something a little bit different. We just are flying just the OLarkers out. And I think part of the reason we did that was because we're realizing that by putting the option there, like, you know, sometimes people felt a little more obligated to bring their family with them because it was like more or less free, right? When there's actually a lot of value in being able to take time away from family to focus on OLark, because we're so embedded into your kind of like work. We're so flexible, like day to day, like, you know, you need to take time off to go deal with something or like pick up a kid or whatever. It's just so easy for our flexible work to blend with that. It's nice to have some time when you can just kind of step away from that and like focus on the company and focus on each other and your relationships with your coworkers and stuff like that. But it's I think it's a really powerful way to create some of those human connections. It's kind of amazing. It's sort of like a big family reunion. It's just so special. And I'm not sure exactly how we managed to do this, but
well, probably because of you, Ben, because I mean, if you can comment, one of the things about Ben for everybody is, and this is a saying that you can elaborate. When I first met Ben, he's like, listen, man, it's not about the money. Yes, you want to make money, you're in business, but it's about solving a problem and hanging out with people that you enjoy working with. And I think, you know, you're being a little bit humble here saying, I don't know how it happened, but it happened because your leadership really drove that and you selected that.
Yeah, sure. I'll step that back a little bit. I think what we ended up doing is we early on when we started this company, my philosophy of like, I want to be the next hire or I want to be the CEO. Like that's been in my head like since the beginning. And then I think Matt, my co-founder, is incredibly good about just like caring about culture. Like he cares about culture. Like I care about culture a lot, but Matt is just like me 10x or something like that. Like Matt is thinking about the way that people kind of will like the way we communicate to the team, the way that we like come back to our values and work values into things. I feel like Matt has like a superpower there. And I think that the combination of me and Matt in those leadership positions and the early days of having these 4 founders living together in a house where we were all basically family and have to like work through any issue. We like lived and worked in the same house for like the first 2 years of the company. And so I think like having that experience, like as we brought more people into this family, I think we just sort of kept that mentality. And I would also think that like without VC money trying to like validate ideas to test hypotheses like with business as a whole, it allowed us to allocate a little bit more time towards building values and building culture and building processes within our organization to keep those things alive. And whenever you show up to a retreat and like everyone is hugging each other and this like the first time they've met, it's just like it's like very special. I mean, people tell me, oh, it's like very California, but it's like it's very special. Like it's having not worked at a bunch of other places, but having kind of like interacted with like other coworkers or just friends outside of OLark, like this is a rare phenomenon for something like that to happen.
Yeah, I think you've got it. I mean, everything that I know and I hear and when we talk and share ideas, it's just that's what you guys have been really good at. And I think that is why you've been able to grow and be successful.
Well, I think there's another factor too. And I think like not only have we grown and been successful, and I would say we've been through hard times and like there are many challenges we run through. But I think as a thing is that as a leader, when you have a team that like really cares about you and about each other, like it's just so much easier to deal with tough times and to deal with shit because you're like, hey, like helping out these guys, like we're in this together. We're trying to get to the same place together. Like, you know, like we may disagree, we may face challenges, like we may argue, but like on a psychological safety level, it's there. Like, you know, if you tell me, like people know that like if like something didn't happen because like their kid was sick or because like they you know just been dealing with a lot of stuff in their personal life, like they know that like my reaction is not going to be like, hey, like what the fuck. It's going to be more like like it's going to be more like, oh my gosh, like, you know, are you taking enough time to like take care of that problem? Like, you know, we can like you know, what can we delegate? Like what can we take off your plate so that you can like be present in that moment and like what you need to deal with outside of work. And I think that for me, it's like a long game because if people know that, like they'll bring their whole selves to work because they know that you got them when they need it.
Yeah, I think that's you've done awesome. And I don't want to. I want to just say a few things. Like, if you have a website out there and you need chat, you need to get OLark. These guys really have been there since the beginning. They care, as you've heard, in customer service. So it's OLark.com now. And I know everybody really wants to talk about the business. I'm just going to say, Ben, like, and you can sum it up, but OLark's doing really well. You're, you know, I don't want to talk about revenue. You do a lot of revenue. You guys,
you gotta feed and clothe and put everyone's kids through college for 31 people. So
yeah, I mean, people can do the math out there. You guys are all making, you know, a good, healthy living, and you're having fun, and I think that's important. So now that I think your shirt that you have on is a 10-year anniversary, right?
it is 10-year anniversary shirt. That's the cool thing when you reach 10 years is these shirts will just appear and you will have nothing to do with them. Like that's like I don't know. Just little things like that make me feel so happy, right? Like just our retreat was organized by our team. It was so co-created. You know, it's amazing. It's amazing what you can do when you empower people.
So you got 10 years into it, you have kids. What does a day look like for the CEO now of OLark?
I feel like a day is such like a, I don't know. I know you kind of like prompted me like we're going to talk about a day.
Well, yeah, I want you
Like,
to like
like
you
my
get
days
up at
might
7, like
vary. My dairy, yeah, sure. I'll give you kind of like high level, right? Because
yeah,
like what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis varies.
yes.
So, and it varies more like on the place in the quarter or like than it does by day of the week or anything like that. So, a typical day for me, and I'll just give you like my day, I don't know, today, because that's like a reasonable example. So today is a Friday. It's end of week. I try to have a little bit more chill Fridays. So I get up whenever right now I'm single parenting. My wife is like on the East Coast helping out her mom was in a bike accident with our
Oh
other daughter. So
God.
me and Nora have been kind of like holding the fort down. Nora's 2 years old, and I've been doing this for about 10 days. So my wife gets back tomorrow. So I'm excited. But like, so I get up whenever Nora gets up, which, could be like, I don't know, 7 o'clock, could be 7:30. Then I go and we have a diabetic cat. So I have to give our diabetic cat a shot. I have to feed our cat. Then I have to give it a shot. I have to go feed our dogs. We also have chickens. So I do like this like mad dash to basically be as efficient as I can to kind of deal with the stuff. My daughter is 2, so I may change a diaper or something like that.
Right.
If she's kind of like active, normally I'll kind of like leave her inside while I'm dashing around dealing with all the animals and keeping them alive. And then I come back inside, and normally, our nanny will come at 8, and then I will like in that gap between when Nora gets up and 8. Normally, I'll just like, I don't know, I'll hang out, play Duplos or something like that. Normally, we have a game we like to do where we build towers, which is pretty fun on Duplos. And so then workday starts 8 o'clock. These caught me like Fridays. I normally try to keep a little bit more chill. So I spent like the first like, I don't know, hour and a half like just really like sitting down and trying to plan, because we have a new quarter coming up, and I just like to sit back and like reflect on our milestones, reflect on our vision, like make sure that all the conversations need to happen to sort of set that up are being thought about. Um, I think I also was doing some reflection on my own OKRs, because again, quarter, like we have offset quarters, and our quarter, this is like the last week of our quarter. So like the last day of the last week of my quarter is normally trying to be pretty chill. Like I don't like mad dashing around at the end of that time. So it's a time to reflect. It's a time to think about like what I've been doing. It's not really a time to like act as much on the last day. So I've been doing a lot of customer interviews. So one of my items was I spent some time writing up customer interviews and sharing with the team. So I typically do that on Fridays. So I have this quarter I did like over 30 calls with customers. Each call was at least half an hour. Longest was maybe like an hour and a half. And I just kind of like let the customer talk, and I make the time and space for them. So and these and I try to like make like very real, like have like very real conversations, and they're targeted, right? Like my hit list was like, I want to talk to definitely I want to focus in on a top 30 by revenue, but I also want to kind of spread that out. Like I looked at top 500 by revenue was like the main kind of batch I was focusing on. Then I also looked at bottom 500 by revenue, because I wanted to get like a split perception of like the big guys and the small guys, and just like have a good sense. And so, I had like an hour and a half call with someone, one of our bigger customers. And for the first half of that call, we're talking about how like they had gone to a Muse concert, and they had like slipped in the bathtub at the hotel, like messed up their leg. And it was like not the night they were expecting. And now they're like being taken care of. They're like working from home, and they're like daughters taking care of them. Just kind of some real freaking context about what's going on in the lives of our customers, because this stuff actually, I think it's important to understand that that like as much as I think I don't know, like the term human resources is dehumanizing. Like at the end of the day, like every person there is a human. They have like challenges in their job role. They have so I ask people like, what are the biggest challenges in their job role? Like not even related to OLark. Like I just want to understand like what's going on in their life. Like what are your challenges? And then I ask like what's going on with OLark, like what's challenging with OLark, and I try to get like a bunch of context about life, context about work, context about OLark, and then at the end I kind of ask like, what do you like about OLark? Because that's always fun to share with the team. But for me, like I'm trying to like pull in context to sort of feed my intuition and my pattern matching around like our customer base, how to reach these people, how to like innovate, and how to like make their lives better. And so like part of the day was spent kind of like reading through some notes, these interviews, trying to type them up. I try to hype these up to the team. And then I use these relationships for things like, oh, like someone marketing wants to do a case study. Well, now I can introduce you. Or like, hey, we hear about this bug happening. I'll be like, well, actually I have a recording of a call that I talked to a customer where they're complaining about the exact same thing. And you can kind of understand where it fits into their workflow and why this is important to them. And it's nice, I feel like as CEO, to be able to kind of provide that top down, like, hey, we really freaking care about customers. And did you know that like Laura was running into this issue? Like just try to like kind of with a customer base of like over 11,000 customers, sometimes like it's hard for the individual people that work at OLark to see more than the customer service request. And so that's something I'm trying to champion. So I spent some time doing that today. I ran a meeting between product and marketing to discuss how we were going to prioritize product channel fit for like new product. And like the main goal there is just like for everyone to just be aligned with what's happening going forward, like who's responsible for what's going to happen next quarter, what's going to happen 2 quarters out, a little bit more like kind of longer term planning. I sat, I'm just looking at my calendar.
Yeah,
I sat in a meeting.
Awesome.
Sat in a meeting where I was kind of finalizing kind of like a role discussion for actually myself, my co-founder, and one of our like senior leaders, just to kind of like hash out sort of timeline and some communication planning for the rest of the team. I ran to the bank.
You did.
And I got this call, and that's basically a day. And there's like a bunch of other like little stuff in there,
Of course.
here, but like that's kind of the big chunks for the day for me.
And
Actually, last thing, I did spend a good amount of time looking over like our directors and our higher level managers like quarter debriefs and providing feedback on that too. And that was something I was kind of rolling in before I ran to the bank. just because like we do more or less OKRs, but yeah.
And for the listeners, OKR.
It's objectives and key results, but at the high level, all objective accomplishment chains up to me. So like if you're like head of marketing, head of product, head of CS, like I'm the person that's holding you accountable. I'm the person who's running like your mid-quarter check-in, your end of quarter check-in. And so the end of quarter check-in, because we're a remote team, is mostly done asynchronous. So there's like a bunch of questions that you fill out and answer in advance. And then we'll have a meeting next week, for like a short meeting next week, to talk about like last quarter and this quarter. But in between getting your reflection in that meeting, there's normally a bunch of asynchronous communication back and forth. Like I'll ask some follow-up questions, they'll answer them. Mostly what I'm interested in is like, did you hit your objectives? Why or why not? What could be improved? What do you learn that you can apply next quarter? And just kind of helps me keep a pulse on where we're at towards some of our bigger milestones and how I can make sure to unblock. But at this stage, like I've found that my biggest leverage is definitely not like its individual contributor, and that's been like a huge growth opportunity for me, because it took me 9 years to figure that out. So like you were asking me a question, sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna and I think that I appreciate you sharing that, because that's a really important point. And I think you recognizing that that your role isn't necessarily to be in the weeds, but more to manage the business. So you're working on the business, not in the business. And
and oh my God, I love working in the business. So like it is an ongoing challenge for me. But I think sometimes you have like these customer calls and stuff like that. Like it's been amazing to see the rippling effect of some of this stuff. Or it's just like it's really neat when you can do work that you see like multiplicative ripples across stuff. but like if you're so down in the weed, you never see that. So like yeah, I think this last year has been a year I've been focused a lot more on that and really being mindful. I have like this little like, I don't know if I can show you this thing. I have like this little thing I made, like I'm an exec coach, and I made this little note for myself that says like, don't jump in, get dopamine from the big picture. And like literally
That's
that
good.
was to help remind myself that like, well, I do get a lot of enjoyment from solving shit really quickly. That's not where I need to get my dopamine from. And it's like, you know, it's a way of like training myself to kind of step back and be a much better leader. But like,
I think that's awesome. I don't know where you got that, but maybe it's just a Benism that you made up. But
I made it up.
but it separates you as a human and saying, hey, look, it's the dopamine here that's doing that to me, and I need to recognize that. I still need that. I still like that hit, but I'm going to get it somewhere else.
Yeah. And actually, it's really interesting. I think I basically trained myself to get more dopamine from the big picture throughout this year. But like at the beginning of the year, it was just like, I just want to get in there and solve that problem.
Well, I think that's a huge lesson, and congratulations to you, because that's a big transition. It takes a lot of self-awareness to be able to do that as a leader.
I feel like that's like, honestly, that's the most fun thing about doing this for 10 years is that you like are constantly learning, and you're learning about yourself, like, and you're just growing. And I think that like two things, like learning, growing, and working with a great team, like what more would you want? And that's why like I have a very hard time understanding people that are like, all they want to talk about is their fundraising strategy or something like that. Just like, man, I understand this stuff is important. I understand like how much money you raise, your valuation is important. But like, I literally just don't care. Like, it's like I will like, we can have this conversation. I can ask you a couple of like useful questions or something like that. But like, for me, like, I just am not really that interested in this kind of stuff. Like, I'm much more interested in figuring out like, how do you build a really great team and how do we solve a problem, and not like the finance side of it. But there's plenty of people that care a lot about that stuff. It's just not me.
Yeah, I love that about you, actually, Ben. I think that's why we hit it off a little bit, because I liked that, I was a VC, but I sort of like, hey, let's just build a real business that we enjoy, because we're going to be dead in like, I don't know.
Yeah, we're all going to die. We're basically guaranteed we're all dying. So let's enjoy the time we have.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think you or I are going to talk about what valuation we had on our deathbed. That's really not what we're going to talk about or remember.
Yeah, well, anyone who's doing that probably wasted their life. So.
I would agree with that. So what I was going to ask you just quickly is, do you in your whole day? The interesting part for me is that I hear any time that you were answering emails. So do you batch process that, or do you just not even care?
I just don't care. Who's emailing me that I care about today? Who needs a response on Friday?
Right. No well, how about Thursday? Like, are you
only emails that I am working? So our company's run on Slack. So none of my employees are emailing me for anything important, or teammates.
Right.
But like, but the main use of email for me is external parties. So like, external parties be like, okay, I'm working on some sales thing. I mean, I did. When I kind of like said for a second, like, oh yeah, and there were some other things, I probably did send a couple emails today, but like I'm not inbox 0. I'm like inbox 1 million.
Yeah,
like,
me
I'm like
too.
Inbox that's going to crash Gmail.
Yeah, exactly.
I make aggressive use of kind of the Gmail importance, like starring, like auto filtering, and basically anything that doesn't get selected in there, I'm probably not going to read, because I get so much junk that it's just it's tough. And so I use my sent email folder as a way of tracking stuff I'm trying to keep track of, because that I know, like, I care about everything in there.
Well, that totally makes sense, and I don't want to spend too much time. I just wanted for the listeners, because sometimes they get like, how do you handle it, and and it sounds like you've got a good grip now. I know your daughter's. I know Nora's going to get up soon, because so far so good. But I want to end with 3 HPTs, high percentage tips, from Ben to the entrepreneur community of anything from starting a company, growing a company. What would those 3 HPTs be?
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for asking me about these in advance, so I could be a little bit smarter about them.
Yeah,
so I spent like 5 minutes before I hopped on the call thinking, maybe 30 seconds. So anyway, so yes, your HPTs. One, I think you should probably read the book Radical Candor. I think Radical Candor is an amazing way of framing feedback. It's written by a lady named Kim Scott that worked at Google, worked at Apple's University, and was trying to spin off kind of like a thought leadership company called Radical Candor now. But the book Radical Candor provides a really good framework of thinking about feedback. And in particular, what you want to do is you want to care a ton and you want to challenge directly. Like that's the ideal quadrant of her little like feedback quadrant. But within that book, it talks a lot about how it's important. It's in her opinion, she values direct, obnoxious feedback more than kind of like passive, like I think a lot of times people hold back on kind of speaking their mind and for fear they're going to offend the other person. And her argument is basically it's better to offend the other person, let them know what's on your mind, than it is to be insincere and just try to like shape that message.
That's
and
why I
me,
love
like,
my wife.
Yes. So in that book, I think that framing is like super valuable and it really resonated with me. And there's also a bunch of applied lessons for management and stuff in that book too. It packs a lot in.
Well, I want to wait before you go to 2. I want to cover myself because I said that's why I love my wife, not because she's obnoxious, because she's honest with me and always gives me the straight feedback. Number 2, Ben.
Yeah, my wife's the same way. Also amazing in the same way. It probably helped me learn a ton.
Yeah, exactly.
Kim Scott just gave me a framework to realize why Cat was so awesome, but and to bring it to work. And that's fantastic. And I think that's what you look for in a partner, a coworker, a co-founder, like a business relationship.
I don't want anybody thinking that I was saying my wife's obnoxious. My wife has made me a better person. No question about it. So number 2, Ben.
Number 2. All right. So this is a useful lesson. I think some people are very impatient, and I think that they try to see things happen very quickly. So like if you look in the metaphor I'm going to use for this is the story analogy. So like basically we went through YCombinator. Back in those days, I think maybe there's 28 other companies in our batch, something like that. I would say of those companies, maybe 5 are still alive right now and operating individually. Wow. So and that might be a slight exaggeration, but there's just like very few of those companies in that batch are still alive right now. And very few of them had, and those that I'm counting are dead, of them, very few had good exits. Like you have to imagine that like, if you're like running a race, right? And you like see these people that are like way ahead of you and they're like, oh, they raised all this money. They're just killing it. They may be running really fast at the beginning, but that does not mean long-term success. And I think that by focusing on customers and creating value for customers, if you do that consistently and grow that scales and that works and that'll get you to where you want to be. Trying to like accelerate that process with a ton of money does not work for many people. It may seem like it when you go out and you like read about a couple of like successes, but if you imagine the amount of money dumped into VC versus the amount of money that actually have huge successes, a few of these like giant, you're like WeWorks and your Theranoses and your like, there's plenty of examples of companies that raise tons of money and like, I think, maybe didn't provide the customer value that their investors thought they were going to get out of it.
That's a great advice.
So I think that just think about that long term, be patient, and don't get caught up in that like, oh, like you have to move like super freaking fast to be successful. I think that like so many companies fail because they try to move too fast, and they try to go somewhere before they're ready to be there, and they just like put themselves in a situation where they can't win. Like for example, like increasing your burn to the extent where now you got to lay off a ton of people to survive. The act of laying off people is like incredibly depressing, and it's painful. And the people that are still around, it's going to be super depressing for them. Like it's hard times, and you don't have to. You can avoid putting yourself in a situation like that. Just one small example. And then my last piece of advice is to think about. I like to call them kind of feedback loops, like around sort of listening learning and improving. And I think you can apply these that framing to basically any situation. You could apply it to customers, right? Like come up with some process where you can listen, right? Actually hear what people are saying, where you can learn, like internalize what it is they're saying, like maybe consolidate a bunch of interviews, think of patterns, stuff like that, and then improve, like actually act on that information to do something new. So you can do it from a customer standpoint. You could do it from a management standpoint, like of listening to your employees or your reports, and taking the time to like learn and taking time to craft like how this is going to lead to improvement. And I think that just if you can like put that like framing in your head, it can be super valuable to approach problems in that way. I think a lot of times people sort of try to like jump in really quickly to say like problem solution, or they try to like move like pretty fast from just like, oh, here's a problem, here's immediate solution, not like here's like 5 different solutions or something like that. Just another like kind of like slow down, think before you act. And then my bonus tip.
Bonus HPT, I love it.
I'm gonna go for feedback is super important, and there's a very straightforward way to look at it. I think a lot of times people, like especially engineers, and the way that you interact and provide feedback over, say, like positive feedback in particular, a lot of times people will be like, oh, like, I don't know, Brandon plus plus, like in a channel or a bot, and they're like, oh, karma goes up. That is shit feedback. The good way to provide feedback is to say that, like, like Brandon, the way that like when we hang out, you're like quite present, and all that your whole mind is on the conversation. It has like a very good impact on me, because I enjoy it. Like when I know that we're like focused and we're like in it together, it makes me like, respect you as a human being, because it kind of like helps me feel seen and heard.
Well, that's very nice of you. I don't know if you're actually talking about this, Brandon. But
I'm totally am. And I think that like, and I think that your candor also, like your willingness to kind of speak and be vulnerable and have conversations, like makes our relationship stronger. And I think, and what that does is it makes me believe that like you do this in more relationships, and it kind of shows me that like, you're a real dude, and makes me feel like I can like trust you in many ways, right? So,
likewise, just so you know, likewise, that's why you and I get along well. But
and I think the point that I'm making is like when you're giving feedback, positive or negative feedback, I think it's important to label like the behavior, what impact you perceive, and then impact that has on you and in the world. And I think that if you can frame feedback like that, it can be it's more work, but it's incredibly powerful for the people that receive the feedback, and you'll get a lot of positive feedback yourself once you think of that way. And that applies both for negative feedback and for positive feedback.
I think that's awesome.
That's my final.
No, that was awesome. I didn't even expect the bonus. So thank you, Ben. Well, I know that your daughter's going to get up, and you have been really great. This has been awesome. I'm so grateful for you coming on. And truthfully, Ben, I love talking to you. I don't know why you and I haven't gotten together more, but we got that group that I told you. Yeah, so that'll give us an excuse, and then we're going to do dinner with our wives and everything together.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. My wife gets back tomorrow. We'll find a time. It'll be fantastic. And so and I appreciate that about you. I appreciate that our conversations are always very real and very candid. And then like when we come back after not talking to each other for a while, it doesn't feel like time's passed. And I think that's another sign of someone who really like is invested in the conversation, and not just trying to like, who's actually listening, and actually like being engaged. So it's fantastic. Well, I really appreciate the call.
I'm looking forward to it. Enjoy your weekend. When Kat gets back, you'll probably be relieved, but you'll be happy to see her and a little less duty. Everybody, Ben from OLark, if you need a chat program, that's what you want to do. That's what you want. And you'll learn why they care about their customers so much. This has been 90 minutes of pretty much understanding that. So thank you so much, Ben. Enjoy your weekend.
For sure. Thanks, Brandon. Take care.